G'day guys, welcome to episode 66 of Ask Jack D. Today I take a question about what I believe governments and education institutions can do to help improve and revolutionise education. And as always, my answer will probably surprise you.
28 and I'm trying to shape history, pulling from the sky for some strength to take with me, line up the stars, fly away quickly and push the world forward.
Hello and welcome to episode 66 of Ask Jack D. Today we take a question from Twitter, from a Twitter handle who's Giuseppe_666. So there's a lot of sixes in today's Ask Jack D. Giuseppe asks about, you talk about the need to revolutionise education. What can governments and education institutions do to implement this? Or what can they implement to do this? Good question. However, I don't think the answer is going to come from them, governments and traditional education institutions. Google's biggest threat is not Yahoo. Google's biggest threat is two guys in a garage with a bloody big idea, right? If you look at disruption as a case study or just as a phenomenon, if you like, disruption doesn't come from traditional incumbents, because traditionally, traditional incumbents are mature enterprise, right? And when it comes to universities and the government, they are the maturest of mature enterprises, which is large, lazy, satisfied, overpriced, averse to change, somewhat a disconnect with consumer by virtue of their size, etc., etc., etc. So they're averse to change, right? They don't really need to innovate. What big businesses do is they sit around, they wait for other people to come to market with really great innovations, prove up the innovations, and then the larger guys go, okay, we should now implement that. Sometimes it's too late for them because the up-and-coming dudes sort of take them over, right? So what will happen, I think, in the world of education, like at a government systemic level and with education institutions over the next 5 years, is probably nothing, right? I don't think, like, they're trying to figure it out, but they're not looking at what matters, which is the student and the education, and they're not prepared, in my experience, to take the risks and take the necessary innovations to truly change. Because universities, in my view, like, you know, a lot of corporate businesses, need to change at a DNA level. Like, a lot of corporates talk about, Jack, we want our people to think more entrepreneurially. Like, they get me in and, you know, they might want me to come and speak to their staff or whatever it might be. Jack, we want our people to think more entrepreneurially. And I look at them and I go, do you? Like, actually, like, I know entrepreneurship is sexy right now, but do you actually? Because I've done research on this organization. Here are 8 different things that would suggest you really don't want your people thinking entrepreneurially. So, you know, it might be cool for a keynote speech at a conference, but at a DNA level, is anything actually going to change here? So it's a bigger and a deeper conversation, right? I think what will happen is up-and-coming private education institutions will find innovative, more effective models to educate people and enable people's growth, enable people to become the best version of themselves while equipping them with the practical skills that they genuinely need and that the world genuinely needs in 2015 and beyond. And then you might start to see some change at a government and university level. However, to answer your question, what do they need to do to implement it? I'm just not optimistic that they will. At a government level and at an institution level, the focus needs to shift. Right now the focus is on research and what's called scholarly activity, which a lot of the time doesn't actually look at what's being taught, right? Education globally is a $4.4 trillion industry. Let's look at the most respected university in the world, Harvard University, right? In 2012, Harvard University did $4 billion revenue. Their revenue isn't decreasing. That's not why I'm using 2012. I'll talk about that in a second. 2014 financial year, their revenue was $4.4 billion, right? But if we go back to 2012, $4 billion top line. That year, one of their professors, a guy called Clayton Christensen, was addressing the Higher Education's Appropriations Committee in Utah. And he was saying that for the first time ever, he believes that higher education is ripe for disruption, including Harvard, because while up-and-coming private education institutions are looking at teaching and looking at what do we need to teach our students, how do we make teaching better, and how do we innovate, and how do we adapt, and how do we genuinely prepare students for the real world when they get out there, while private education is looking at that, institutions like Harvard are not. And he said that year, Harvard's budget for making teaching better was $0, right? $0. Which is representative of a lot of traditional education institutions and is representative of the overall attitude in traditional education, right? There's this beast of an industry, $4.4 trillion. in an entrepreneurial sense, it's crazy to me that there's a $4.4 trillion industry and no one's looking at the customer. No one's looking at what is actually happening at the interface of education, which is what's being taught, right? So governments issue capital to university based on their ranking. Their ranking comes from how much research they develop and how much research they publish and how well received that research is, not on student completion rates, student retention rates, student employment rates, nothing to do with the customer, just research, right? So the government could change that. At a university level, they could also change, right? The universities, for the faculty, a lot of the time, they have KPIs around, we developed this piece of curriculum, how long can we keep this piece of content and curriculum in play for, right? So we maximise the return on investment for every piece of curriculum developed, which means they're incentivised to keep curriculum in play for as long as possible. That needs to be flipped. They should be incentivized to develop new curriculum every year, like at worst, ideally every quarter, but let's start with at least every year, right? Particularly in fields like business, where the world is changing so fast. So at a systemic level, it's not set up for the student to succeed. At a traditional institution level, it's not set up for the student to succeed. The disruption will not come from either of those two bodies. It will come from private players who have the courage to innovate and who are intimately connected with consumer. It's what happened in technology, it's what happened in media, it's what happened in social media, it's what happened in travel. It gets disrupted by the up-and-coming players that care more about the customer than the traditional incumbents. That's what I think needs to change in education. Really good question. Comments below. What do you think needs to change in education? I'll be there. Let's have the discussion. What needs to change in education below? Look forward to chatting with you guys tomorrow.
Actualized a wish that I dreamed as a kid, yeah. 'Cause I'm lighting